Part 1. First Impressions and Arrival at Baba Vida. Our visit to the Baba Vida Fortress began with a sense of awe as we approached the massive stone walls rising majestically along the banks of the Danube River. Perched at the edge of Vidin, a quiet and historic town in northwestern Bulgaria, the fortress stood like a sentinel of centuries past, offering not just a stunning view, but a powerful reminder of the region's tumultuous and storied history. Walking through the park that hugs the Danube's shoreline, we were guided by signs pointing us toward the fortress. The area was peaceful, framed by trees and wide open spaces. As we drew closer, the thick limestone walls and rounded towers came into view, impressive in scale and form, remarkably intact for a structure over 1,000 years old. It's easy to see why Baba Vida is regarded as the best-preserved medieval castle in Bulgaria. Crossing a short wooden bridge, we entered the fortress through a vaulted gateway flanked by stone towers. At that moment, we truly stepped back in time. It's hard to imagine that beneath our feet lie layers of history. The remnants of a Thracian settlement, a Roman watchtower known as Bononia, and later the foundations of this powerful medieval fortress. Inside, the air was cool and still. The atmosphere was heavy with centuries of stories, of kings and sieges, prisoners and defenders. A plaque informed us that the fortress was first constructed in the 10th century, during the First Bulgarian Empire, to guard against invasions from the north. Throughout its long life, it has seen many occupiers and been part of both glory and hardship: Byzantines under Emperor Basil II, Hungarian invaders, and later the Ottomans. Each left their mark here. But perhaps its most notable chapter came in the 14th century, when Baba Vida served as the royal residence of Tsar Ivan Stratimir, the last ruler of the semi-independent Vidin Tsardom, before the Ottomans absorbed it into their empire. Part 2. Exploring the courtyard and the layers of history. Entering the inner courtyard, we were struck by its symmetry and the imposing scale of the surrounding towers. The fortress is laid out with an inner and outer ring of defensive walls, creating a stronghold that was virtually impregnable during its heyday. The high walls wrapped protectively around the open central area, where we took a few moments to absorb the quiet beauty and reflect on the stories once held within these walls. The courtyard also serves as a museum space today. Along the edges, displays and interpretive panels explain the construction techniques, the various sieges, and the fortress's function through the Middle Ages. We learned that the Romans were the first to see the strategic value of this location, building the outpost of Bononia here in the 1st century AD to monitor river traffic and protect the empire's northern frontier. When that outpost fell into disuse, the Bulgarians repurposed its stones to build what would become Baba Vida. As we moved toward one of the corner towers, we passed what would have been storage areas for weapons and grain, as well as deep cisterns that collected rainwater, crucial for withstanding long sieges. During its peak, the fortress was not only a military post, but a self-contained castle with supplies, soldiers, and even a chapel within its walls. Climbing a narrow stone stairway, we reached the upper levels. From here, we could walk along the battlements and look out across the Danube River to Romania in the distance. The view from the top was breathtaking. It's easy to imagine sentries pacing this route centuries ago, watching for enemy ships or signal fires from nearby outposts. The strategic position of Baba Vida was not just symbolic. It was key to Vidin's survival. We took our time exploring each tower. One had been converted into a small exhibition hall, where old maps, weapons, and manuscripts were displayed. Another had a recreated prison cell, illustrating how the Ottomans later used the fortress as both an arsenal and a place of confinement. Part 3. Legends, the Princess Vida, and the later centuries. As we continued exploring, one of the most charming aspects of our visit was learning the legend behind the name Baba Vida. According to Bulgarian folklore, A local king had 3 daughters, Kula, Gamza, and Vida. While Kula and Gamza married unwisely, wasting their dowries and allowing their lands to fall into ruin, Vida remained unmarried and chose to build a stronghold to protect her people. The name Baba Vida, meaning Grandmother Vida, honors her wisdom, strength, and independence. It's a tale of feminist resilience long before such terms existed, and whether myth or metaphor, it lent a warm, human touch to the cold, solid stones around us. Knowing this story made walking through the castle feel more personal, as if the spirit of Vida herself still watched over the place. In the centuries that followed its glory days under Tsar Stratimir, the fortress adapted to the times. Under Ottoman control, it was no longer the seat of kings, but was refortified and used as a military arsenal, garrison, and prison. Several of the darker rooms beneath the towers were used for confinement, and we stepped briefly into one of them, a chilling experience. The thick walls absorbed all sound, and the narrow window offered only a sliver of light. Here, history was no longer romantic or noble. It was harsh and real. Despite neglect and changing fortunes, Baba Vida endured. When other castles in Bulgaria were razed or fell into ruin, this one held on. Partly due to its solid double-wall design and partly because it remained in use longer than most, it survived the centuries largely intact. Part 4. Reflections on Preservation and a Living Monument. Before leaving, we spent a while sitting near the moat, now dry, but once filled with water from the Danube. From here, the full scale of the fortress came into view again. 4 large round towers dominate the corners, while additional square towers punctuate the outer wall. The design is clean, purposeful, and effective, a lasting testament to the engineers and builders of medieval Bulgaria. The preservation of Baba Vida as a national monument and museum is a gift to future generations. Inside the walls, you feel history not as an abstraction, but as something tangible. Layers upon layers, still echoing with the sounds of soldiers' boots, royal footsteps, and the clang of iron gates. This is not a reconstructed fantasy or theme park. It is the real thing. We admired how sensitively the site is managed. Interpretive signs in Bulgarian and English provided context without overwhelming us. The staff were welcoming but unobtrusive, allowing us to absorb the site at our own pace. One of the most memorable moments of our visit came at the very end, as we stood on the western wall and looked out toward the setting sun over the Danube. The river flowed slowly and endlessly, much as it has for thousands of years. It reminded us that history, like the river, is always moving, but some places, like Baba Vida, hold their ground, preserving memory and legacy. We left with deep appreciation for the fortress, for the people of Vidin who preserve it, and for the remarkable history of a place that has stood through the rise and fall of empires.